Beauty. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Trapper Goldsmith, host of the TeeRap show, where we showcase elite athletes and sport individuals with their inspiring stories and rise to glory in their pursuit of everlasting greatness. Our guest today is a true legend of the motocross world. He's won a combined 12 South African Motocross Championships. And motocross, supercross, if you're not familiar, it has to be one of the most grueling sports on earth. With now machines that have over 50 horsepower and weigh less than 250 pounds are basically rocket ships on wheels that you jump and throttle over heights of 100 feet in the air. So it's wild. So Richard van der Westhuizen, born and raised in South Africa, not only dominated the sport of motocross over there, I mean, he's more famous than Crocodile Dundee is in Australia, but also became a very successful entrepreneur and business owner before embarking on his journey here to Canada with his lovely wife. He's going to share today the mental side of racing for a living, doing one of the most dangerous sports in the world, coming to Canada, starting over again, and what truly separates amateur athletes from pro athletes, how business is a sport now. So buckle in, listen in. This ride's going to get wild. Richard, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here on your show.
All right. Well, motocross, probably my favorite sport of all time. Most people don't know I raced motocross at a national level until I was about 15. Racing was in my blood, man. So I'm excited to talk moto with you today, Richard. Let's just start, man. How'd you get started on a dirt bike when most people in South Africa are playing soccer or playing rugby? Motocross isn't kind of the mainstream sport there, is it?
No, not at all. It's quite a small sport compared to rugby and soccer and cricket. But yeah, my dad introduced me when I was young. We started riding when I was about 5 years old. My dad used to race, and obviously when we came along, he parked the bikes for a bit, and we got little Pee-wee 50s, and man, once the bug bit, it was motocross was life, you know. So we it started off as a fun sport and a family like building and bonding thing where yeah, we just used to spend every weekend at the track, and then it got pretty serious, and we started racing some more and started traveling the country, and then started traveling internationally. So yeah, it was all my dad's fault. And yeah, it's my uncles used to race as well, from my mom's side. So
it's in the family.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of my cousins raced and rode. So yeah, it was motocross is life, man.
So did you have siblings then as well? Did they race?
Yeah, I did indeed. I had a brother. He was a bit younger than me, only 1 year, but yeah, he was pretty good too. He had a lot of talent, but unfortunately he crashed quite a bit. And at one stage they thought something was wrong with his bones, man, because he'd just break bones all the time. So
crazy.
Yeah, he canned it after a couple of years. He just broke a lot of bones, but he was super talented. I mean, he could get on a bike now and go straight and hit big jumps. So yeah, he was pretty good.
Nice. And motocross is by far like one of the most expensive sports. Funding it, I know. I grew up and there was with 3 boys, so my parents trying to foot that bill, I know, was very difficult on them financially. Talk about like how challenging it was to come up in that sport and attract sponsors, keep funding, and be on bikes that, I mean, ultimately you have to be on the new bike to be competitive.
Yeah, that's so true. You know, I didn't come from a super wealthy family. My dad was an engineer on the mines, and he made it work. He mortgaged the houses twice. He spent every cent in our, you know, and it went towards our racing. So it was challenging. I mean, until I started performing and doing well, it was really difficult. And even when you get to that high level in South Africa, you're still paying for quite a bit of it yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, we sacrificed quite a bit when we were younger, and but we made it work. I mean, it was a passion, and it was our blood, and it made us happy. So yeah, it was just a lot of sacrifice. Yeah.
As a parent, you do whatever it takes, right, to watch your kids grow up and achieve their dreams.
Yeah, of course. I don't have kids yet, but I'm scared if I have boys, they'll want to race. So,
Yeah. I always say it's either it's in your blood or it's not. Like once you get on a bike and you ride it for the first time, you either know like this is where I'm meant to be. Like motocross, like you said, motocross is life. Or it just scares you and you never get back on a bike ever again.
Yeah, I always joke with my wife. I say I really pray that we have girls, or if we have boys, I'll just like hide all the motocross memorabilia and stuff away. But
Yeah.
no, it would be cruel.
What did Dad do growing up? He was a golfer. He was.
Yeah.
So talk about Richard, because it's. I mean, I've done it. It's grueling. It's exhausting. You need cardio, but you also need strength when you have a machine like that. You're trying to hold on. How is training different for motocross than maybe a more traditional like rugby, hockey, or football sport?
Sure. So motocross is a unique beast. I mean, you have to be super strong. You have to be cardio fit. And there's a fine balance. I mean, I'm sure you know, maybe some of the listeners won't know, but there's a serious problem that the riders face, which is called arm pump. And it's when your muscles in your forearms pump up. And once that happens and once that sets in a race, you're toast. You can't really do anything about it. So that, in my experience, the only way that I got rid of that was feeling comfortable on the bike and practicing and training a lot. So, I mean, I did a lot of cardio. I did strength training, but not like super intense, heavy weights. A lot of circuit type training, rowing, swimming, running, everything. The more cross training we did, the better. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Cross training. That's a good way to put it. Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about like you want the pump, but in motocross you don't want the pump. That's your worst enemy.
No, and it's deceiving because I mean, you look at top professionals like Sexton or Marvin Muskin, and they look really lean and skinny, but they are super strong, man. They can race flat out for 30, 40 minutes, and your heart rate is super high during those sessions. So it's arguably one of the most demanding sports in the world, and certainly I've tried a lot of different sports, and to me, motocross is definitely up there.
And it's different, right? Because you can ride the bike like a cycling, you can run and jog and train like that. But when you got to put a certain amount of time on a dirt bike and training there to build those muscles, reflexes, and cardio as well.
Yeah, of course. So the pros are definitely practicing 2 or 3 times a week and on the weekend. South Africa was a bit tricky. I would try and maximize my time on the weekends on the bike and try at least once or twice in the week. But you always have that kind of fear in the back of your head. If you're not staying sharp, then you're going to get smoked on the weekends. So I always try to be on the bike as much as I could. So, but like you said earlier, it's super expensive. So there's a fine balance. Yeah.
So you won multiple championships in South Africa, but most of the exposure for the sport comes in the US with the Supercross series and the motocross series. Did you ever come overseas to try your hand at racing in the US?
I did. I raced US National in 2004. I did a couple of Texas State Championships as well. I raced in New York. It's difficult because, like I said, I didn't really come from a super wealthy family, and at that time, I didn't have the funding to sustain me when I came over to the States. So I raced briefly in the States. I raced a few times. I raced quite a bit in Europe and in England. I actually lived in Scotland for a year and did the British Championships when I was quite young, when I was about 16. Yeah, so I raced extensively in Europe and that side of the world. But yeah, it was unfortunate. It's how life works. If I'd had the opportunity to stay there, I definitely would have. But it's just not the way the cards were dealt. So
it's not like you're just packing up. You got a suitcase and you're just flying across the world. Like you got to get your bike parts and all of that is a pretty big bill to move your bike around.
Yeah, and traveling with a big kit bag and like you said, with parts now with
all your gear,
flying, it's difficult. Yeah. So the last kind of big experience I had was we went to the Motocross of Nations in Belgium in 2012, and we took our own suspension. I took my own suspension over, and yeah, it's just tricky, packing them. We actually packed the forks in a rifle box, and yeah, because obviously it's got foam inside. So that was the only way we could really travel with them. And yeah, it's tricky. It makes for interesting stories, that's for sure.
Yeah, because you almost got to disassemble the bike, eh?
Yeah, so I mean, in that case, I was lucky. I had a bike there. We rented a bike there, so I just took my suspension and stuff over.
Oh,
Maybe
nice.
one or two parts, but not like the whole bike. Funny story though. In 2000, we raced. It was called the Motocross of African Nations, and back then I was on 85cc. So the bike was pretty small, and I went over with my dad and the South African team, and we literally packed a CR80 in suitcases. And
Just completely disassembled it.
yeah, my dad had the motor in baggage, and we assembled it in the hotel on like a little stool there, and we went racing. And yeah, those are awesome stories, but there's definitely no ways you could do that now.
No, that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Oh, so was your dad a pretty good mechanic too then? Like he helped you on that side?
Yeah, so he was an engineer, so he had that mindset, and he actually built a lot of my parts, heavier flywheels. He built a subframe for the CR80. He was super, super technically minded, and yeah, I trusted him. He was really good on the bikes, and we won a couple of South African championships together. So it's testament to how good his work was. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I mean, we both know sport is progressive. It doesn't matter if it's motocross. So you and I are similar age. So we grew up like Jeremy McGrath and those guys on 2 strokes. And now the sport has evolved to 4 strokes. And these things are, like I said, they're mini rocket ships. How much has the sport progressed, and how much faster is it than, in the 90s, the glory days, I call them? But
yeah, so it's such an interesting topic. I was listening to a podcast the other day on this very thing, and I was listening to Anderson speak about it. And back when McGrath and the heydays of Supercross and motocross in 99 and sort of that era, especially Supercross, the jumps were super like steep and peaky, and I think the speeds were a lot slower. We're now, especially in Supercross, the speeds are a lot faster. The jumps are maybe not as steep, but they're still pretty steep. And yeah, I mean, if you will watch the World Championship Motocross Series, you'll see what the speed is like. It's ridiculous. And yeah, there's a cost for that. I mean, there's some big crashes in that series, and I guess it boils down to how the tracks are designed and built. I mean, the bike will only go as fast as you twist the throttle, but these guys are so good now that they are pushing the limits of these things. And a 450 is significantly faster than a stock 2-stroke 250 that they used to race back in the day. So yeah, it's the bikes have evolved. They're incredible now. I mean, you can map the bikes, you can adjust the suspension. I mean, even a stock standard bike now is incredible. So the factory bikes must be unbelievable now.
pretty wild. Yeah, I've heard a Tomax bike is worth like 80 grand or something. It's crazy, all the trick parts they have in there.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was more. Yeah.
So there's a huge danger level to it. Not even back then, of course, but now it's a whole different level of danger. What was the gnarliest injury you ever had, Richard?
Yeah, so I think the gnarliest one was my last one. That kind of took me out of racing. Basically, there were 2 jumps, and a kid had crashed in between them. And by the time I had taken off on the first one, I had nowhere to go. And I hit him, and I launched off the track, and I landed in like a pile of rubble. And I actually broke both my ankles at the same time, and bashed my head and wrecked the bike. And yeah, it was nasty, man. And but that's part of it. Motocross is a dangerous sport, and I think the biggest part of that is preparation. If you're prepared and you're fit and you're mentally strong, it'll prepare you for the unexpected. I mean, to a point, obviously. I mean, something like that's kind of out of your control, wrong place, wrong time. If I was not fit, if I was not strong, it would have been a lot worse. So it's all calculated risk. But I think it boils down to preparation. If you're prepared and your body's prepared for the sport and you're mentally prepared, then I think you're halfway there already.
Yeah, mentally prepared. So fear is a big, like, people get in a car accident and they have trauma from that, and PTSD and certain mental. So how getting in a terrible wreck, how do you come back and get on a bike and race again at a professional level after, a crazy injury like that, or crash?
Yeah, so that is such a good question. And it's tricky because you see a lot of these professionals, they have these horrible crashes and they come back and they perform even better. And you think, how can they get over that? But from my personal experience, you just learn to block it out, really. And your passion for the sport supersedes the fear. So just to give you an example, I mean, one of my best friends, a guy called Donovan, such an amazing human and inspiring human being. We were practicing for a pre-national, and he had a horrible crash. He like lawn darted in the bottom of a hole head first, and the paramedics were like, "Oh, this is not good." We spent time with him at hospital. He had brain injuries and stuff, and we had to race a national 2 weeks after that. And I didn't choke. I just didn't ride well at all. And I mean, you're hitting a jump where your best friend, he nearly passed away. It was that bad. And now he's an inspiration. I mean, he does these huge cycling events and he does triathlons and stuff, and he still has a bit of damage to his arm and stuff. But I mean, witnessing that and getting over that fear, sometimes you just have to block it out. I mean, I know when we were younger and we were racing and stuff and we crashed, my dad would say, "You got to get up. If your arm is not hanging off or the bone's not sticking out, you've got to get up and get away straight away and go ride, because otherwise you let that fear sink in, you got problems." So we got taught that at quite a young age, and I think that's, maybe it's a bit brutal in today's times, but it certainly helped me. I mean, I've thinking back to when some of these difficult things have happened, I think in my older age now, I think, man, how did you even deal with that? But when you're young, you're just so focused on winning or racing or being the best that you can be, that you literally just push that stuff out. Yeah.
And when we're younger, we have a little bit more short-term memory than we do as we get older.
Yeah.
There's a little more memories in the junk box the older we get.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So do you think in a sport like that, there's a higher level of mental strength or focus because it's life or death just about when you're racing?
I've done other sports before, it's crazy. I've never really considered motocross a dangerous sport. You speak to people and you say you raced or whatever, and the first thing people would say is, it's a dangerous sport. And you think, well, I'm doing my best to mitigate the risks and I'm preparing myself like we spoke about earlier. But I don't think mentally you need to prepare yourself any other way different than another sport. I mean, all these sports at such a high level, you have to be so mentally strong. I mean, I know you used to play golf and be a professional golfer, and I think to myself, it's the mental games and the mental strength you need to dig yourself out of a hole. Even tennis. I played tennis for a bit at school, and when you're getting caned set after set, like, to pull yourself out of that, you need to be mentally strong. So I think it's relative. I think when you're at that level, and certainly the professionals, they know the risks that they're taking, like Sexton and Tomac and all of them, but they are so good at just being so hyper focused on what they need to do. Their focus is so strong that they're not thinking about anything else, and they'll deal with whatever else presents itself when they cross that bridge. I think it's just extreme focus. Yeah.
And like you said, right, a little part of it is you got a job to do, right? It's no different than being in the military or being a bull rider, or like, you don't think about, I could die today. It's, hey, I got a job to do and I just got to get out there and get it done.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, even the military thing, you need to be so mentally strong. I mean, I'm sure a lot
Mhm.
of people have read David Goggins' book, and you see the hell that they go through just to get in. And yeah, motocross is really tough. But I mean, it all depends on your perspective and how you approach things. I mean, you can make anything tough. Um, and yeah, I mean, motocross is super, super, coming like I haven't raced for since 2017, and looking at it in hindsight, sure, it is dangerous and it's tough and you have to be physically strong and mentally strong, but I would apply those things to any sport, really.
Right.
Yeah.
I was talking to Seth Barnes today, and he was 12 years in the Marines, also races motocross, and just he talked about how being a Marine helped him be a better motocrosser, but being a motocrosser also helped him be a better Marine. And it's cool how, separate professions can also help you be better in both.
Yeah, of course. I think the lessons that I've learned in motocross, and certainly digging deep and facing defeat and coming back, um, are lessons that I don't know if I would have got anywhere else. And it's certainly shaped who I am as a human being. And it's taught me how to dig deep and just never to give up. And those are excellent lessons for life, I think,
For
not just
life.
motocross. Yeah.
Totally. So what mistakes you raced at the highest level, you won championships at the highest level. What mistakes do you see amateurs make? It's specific to motocross, I guess, that you don't see pros make.
That's a great question. It's a tricky question because, like, you look at the States and you see all these training facilities where kids are built and they are groomed from so a little bit of potential. They get put into Club MX or Millsap's training facility, and they have that opportunity. I think that maybe in America, distraction is quite a big thing. With everything that's going around. I mean, America is amazing and it's a big place, and I've been there, and you get awestruck because everything is so big. In terms of what separates the pros from the amateurs, again, I'm probably just repeating myself, but it's the focus, but it comes with extreme purpose. So the first thing
Extreme
that I
purpose.
see, yeah. So the first thing that I would notice if I saw another pro at the track was they are there to do a job, like we spoke about.
Right.
They get there, they're not doing any funny stuff. The kit is on, the bike's warmed up, and they're out and they're doing their heats or their sessions or whatever. They come back, they know they need to be drinking, they know they need to be eating, they know their mechanic needs to be filling up their bike. Everything is structured and planned out, and they won't go there and mess around like a lot of weekend warriors do for the love of the sport, that because it's their job and they're professional. They get there, they get their job done, and they're out because they need to go cycle, or they need to go do a stretch or yoga or whatever. So I think just their demeanor and their focus and their drive and just their purpose is just so structured. And yeah, I mean, you can pick it up a mile away. Yeah.
That's powerful. Yeah, I agree. That makes a lot of sense to any sport. I think you're right. Is certainly that purpose. Wake up. They know what they're doing. They know what their job is, and limit distractions. I mean, with everything in the world today and how connected we are, and distractions are huge.
Yeah, I mean, and it is, when I was racing and stuff, social media, I mean, I would say my peak of racing was about 2012, 2013. And social media and Instagram was just coming in. I mean, there was not too much distraction, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure you would know if you went to a golf course or a range or even a driving range, you would be able to pick up immediately who's a professional just on how they act. And, when I was racing, I was super, super focused on the racing and what I needed to do, and everything would be a blur, and people would come speak to me, and it was never that I was rude or not humble or whatever, but just so focused, and you kind of get this glazed look in your eyes that you've got this job to do and you need to focus. And when the racing's done, it immediately lifts and you can relax.
Yeah.
yeah, I used to get a bit of grief for it because people used to say I was a bit serious and stuff, but I took it seriously. So yeah.
Yeah, well, you have to at the level you raced, and it obviously shows in your results. So, Richard, when did you kind of know? I mean, you talked about the injury. That was your worst injury ever. But really, what solidified the decision to retire and not come back from that?
So I actually retired twice. I I won. So yeah, and I must say, before I even start this, is yeah, my level was here, and like the level in the States is over here. Like I was maybe just touching on like, yeah, I wouldn't say exactly where my level would be in the world championships and stuff, but I just wanted to put that out there. Just, the South African level is really good. But that's a whole discussion for a different story. So anyway, I won MX2 and MX1 in the same year in 2013. And I promised myself and kind of my family that if I'd done that, if I won both in a row, both in the same year, I would call it quits. And I did, and I called it quits, and I was super happy. But like many top sportsmen, they get that hunger, and they're not getting that hit that they get from racing or from winning and stuff. So I stayed involved with the sport. I was a brand ambassador for Yamaha. I actually dabbled in a little bit of enduro as well, which in hindsight, I didn't enjoy that much. I didn't do too badly, but I really did not enjoy it. So then I got
It's just different, right? It's different than being on a motocross track. I mean, my favorite part was jumping. So like I loved jumping almost to a fault, where my dad would grill me to work on corners and I just wanted to jump.
Yeah, exactly. And I was brought up racing motocross from when I was 6 years old. So to now try to learn these new skills, and it is like chalk and cheese when it comes to enduro. So I can't really remember how it happened, but I was racing enduro for Husqvarna South Africa, and before I knew it, I was racing motocross again in 2016, and I didn't really have the results that I expected from myself, and it was expected. I didn't race national motocross for 2 or 3 years, but then in 2017 I started winning again, and those feelings and that like high that you get from winning just came back, and I was like, man, this is a good feeling. And but yeah, it was at that point where I was really focusing on I was running a business. I'd actually started studying, and I was racing. So it was all a bit much, and it was just a recipe for disaster waiting to happen. And then, boom, I broke my ankles. I'd paid for my tickets to go to the Motocross of Nations again. I was going to represent South Africa in England. And I was second or third in the championship, but I'd been winning a couple of rounds, so it was really tight going into the last round. But 2 or 3 weeks before I had that crash, I broke both my ankles, and that was it. And that's when I decided, man, you need to call it a day now. You've done enough. Yeah. And I was 31 years old, so I'd been racing for a long time, and I was pretty happy with how it all panned out.
To be able to race that long from starting when you're 6, yeah, that's a heck of a motocross career.
Yeah, and you see a lot of people retiring early because it's brutal on your body. I mean, you're lucky if you get away unscathed. And in all fairness, you see a lot of people having a lot more severe injuries. And I think that was a worry of my parents as well. And that as you get older, like we said, that's a big worry deep inside, that you think, man, I'm quite lucky I got away from it's kind of scot-free. I mean, my ankle's a bit suspect now from the crash, but I'm able to walk. I'm able to lightly run now. I can run a little bit, so life is good in regards to that. So yeah, it's difficult knowing when to rip the Band-Aid off and stop. I certainly do want to get a bike again and just ride for fun. I don't want to race, but yeah, once it's in your blood, man, it is never going away.
And when you've raced, you never just put around. Like once the blood starts going, you start cranking out laps. So Richard, you talked about business. You had a business. in South Africa. What similarities did you kind of find between business and sport? Being an entrepreneur and being an athlete.
Yeah, I think it's just again the focus, the ability to dig deep. I started my company from nothing. You know, I thought I wasn't embarrassed, but when I started it with nothing. It was only me. I was doing something on the side for fun, and then it grew, and then my brother joined, and my cousin joined, and some good friends joined, and then before we knew it, there were 7 of us doing what we did. And there's just challenges every day. I mean, you know the story. You're dealing with a customer that's not happy, or you're dealing with a shipment that didn't arrive, which is a common thing in South Africa. And you're dealing with the difficulties of being so far from the hub of what we were doing. So I think it's just the ability to dig deep and remain focused and bounce back when things don't go according to plan. I mean, these are all excellent lessons from sport that I was able to translate into business. And yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. I'm sure there's a whole bunch more, but those are the big ones for me anyway.
And it really comes down on your shoulders, where same as, I mean, you can have the best team, the best parts, and the best bike, but at the end of the day, it comes down, it's on your shoulders to cross the finish line first.
Yeah, and I enjoy that responsibility. I think, especially with motocross, you know, I obviously didn't win on my own. We had a team. I had my family. I had obviously my sponsors and all of that supporting me. But at the end of the day, when I was on the track, it was up to me, and I enjoyed that, because if I underperformed, then blame me, you know. And the same thing with business. I think I enjoy that responsibility of owning my own company, you know, being responsible for that. And that is something I get extreme joy, you know, enjoyment out of, and I have a big passion for.
So you moved from South Africa to Canada. Did you always know you wanted to come here, or was that kind of something that developed?
No, it was something that developed. I mean, obviously when I was racing, coming to Canada was thoughts that maybe came in and out of my mind a little bit, but you know, I got engaged to my now wife, and we started the process of immigrating, and COVID came and completely wrecked everything and delayed everything. Canada was just the easy choice, the easiest choice to get to a first world country. I mean, South Africa will always be home, and our parents are there, and our friends are there, and that's a super, super difficult part of letting go. But I wanted to be in a land that presents opportunity to me and my wife, and she can be safe and we can be safe, and where hard work is rewarded as well. And also, if I do start a family, which I'm really hoping that we do, that they can have the best opportunities and be safe. And I want to gift that to my family, and I think we're in the right spot to do it. Canada's beautiful. It works. It's the people are friendly, and I'm very grateful and lucky to be here. So I'm stoked.
We're fortunate to live in Canada, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And start your family of golfers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had adversity in sport, as everyone does. Anyone that gets to a professional level is going to have to overcome adversity. How do you think, Richard, that's helped you now, moving past sport, moving into business, immigrating to a foreign country for you guys? How has sport really equipped you to handle adversity?
Oh man, it is nearly everything. It is. I've always had this feeling in my deep down.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think you can achieve success at anything without adversity, if you haven't been equipped or developed that skill to overcome adversity?
I think if you achieve something without some degree of adversity, it's not shallow, but it doesn't feel as good. You know, my first championship that I won, I came back from a broken wrist, and I had to ride in pain, and that adversity made me appreciate it so much more. And you know, I've always thought this deep down inside, I wouldn't be the person today that I am if I didn't suffer through all of that stuff and didn't learn those lessons from sports. So I wouldn't know how to approach things. And I'm so grateful for having gone through those difficult times, because I've got that, like Goggins says, you've got that stored in your memory bank. So, when times get tough, you can refer to that stuff and say, hey, you've gone through this difficult stuff. What you're dealing with might not be as difficult, but you're equipped to deal with it. So, yeah, that's,
I like how you said that. Grateful to have gone through difficult times. So here you are, you have gratitude for adversity, as that's my approach as well. The health issues that I experienced and ended my sport career. Grateful to have gone through difficult times. And I think so often people run from adversity. They run from failure. And that's a powerful message right there, that you have to run towards it. You have to experience adversity if you want any kind of success.
Yeah. And there's two people that really drilled this into me when I was younger. My dad, he maybe not in these words, but he was like, never give up. Never, ever give up. You push until the last lap, because you never know what can happen. And a best friend of mine, Ryan Ferrix, he used to be my trainer. He studied sport, and he was a trainer of mine towards the latter part of my career. We've got the adult version and we've got the PG version, but we would say never give up. Never, ever give up.
Yeah.
Because if you give up, then ... And that's always rang true. I mean, to me, sometimes you don't have the luxury of giving up, or the opportunity of giving up. So to me, it's, you just keep pushing, push, because I've always seen, certainly in sport, you never want to give up, because you just it shows that you're weak. And I never wanted people to see any of my weaknesses. So I would always push to the end. So yeah, that's I hate giving up, and it's something I hope I never ever do in my life.
Can you remember a time though in your life when you were close, when you were like, you hit your limit? You're like, man, I don't know how much fight I have left in me.
Oh yeah, there's been many times. There's been many times. I mean, I spoke to you about that first championship that I won. I think my wrist came out of cast, I think the Wednesday before the national on the Saturday. I did like a warm-up ride as soon as it came out of the cast, and I was riding through extreme pain. I think one of the biggest ones was my final championship year in 2013. I had two really good first rounds. I mean, I was pretty much the best I'd ever been. I was in my prime. I was just super, super strong. And I went training before the third round, and I didn't even crash. I slid in a turn, and my knee went to the side, and I heard a pop. And I was like, oh no, that is not good. And my body went into shock, and I went for an MRI, and they were like, yeah, you have a 3rd-degree tear of your MCL in your knee. And the problem is that your knee brace sits right on those ligaments and the tendons and everything. So I was on painkillers for the rest of the year. But I mean, that's a scenario where I could have just thrown in the towel and just said, that's me, that I'm done. But just dug deep and forced my way through the pain, and and I won the championships that year. So it was well worth it. So there's always that reward at the end of the tunnel. So it might really suck now, but if you can push through and get through it, then pot of gold is waiting for you on the other side.
So was there a mental approach? Like people meditate, they visualize, all of this mental training that we've learned now in the last, decade or so. Was there a mental approach or a trigger that you actually used to kind of stay in it and be focused on the big goal through the pain?
Yeah, there was. Maybe it was bluffing myself or talking trash to myself, but in the morning of the race, my brother was with me, and he knew how bad my knee was. And he would come up to me in the morning, and he would have this hesitancy in his face, and he'd be like, hey bud, so how you feeling? And I feel amazing. The bike is ripping, my body feels good, and I'd be smiling, and I'd be And I'd force myself into that mindset because I know if I woke up and I was in a bad mood and I was feeling sorry for myself, then the day would just have it wouldn't have gone well. So I would force myself into thinking these positive thoughts and bluff myself maybe. And just, I would not allow any negativity to come inside just because I knew that I had that job at hand. So, yeah.
Almost like fake it before you make it. Like you're really tricking your entire psychological makeup into you feel great.
Yeah. And it's not to say that the pain went away or I didn't know that what was at stake or what I was doing. But it was just a strategy that I had and it seemed to work. So
nice.
And my brother said to me once the season was done, he was like, I think that was when I knew that you were going to do it, is because you just pushed through and you didn't feel sorry for yourself and you didn't throw in the towel, like I said. And it was extremely rewarding at the end of it. Yeah.
So I know you're finishing your MBA right now. What's the next championship for you? What's the next big goal you're gunning down?
Yeah, I compare my life to motocross and championships and that all the time. I think the next big thing for me is, like you said, I'm finishing off my MBA. I've got a couple of weeks to go and then I'm done, which has been a long stretch. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm grateful now. I've got a position at a cool company that I'm working for. I think ideally another championship for me would be to own my own company again and do something that I'm super passionate about and be responsible for on my own. That's not to say I wouldn't want to work with a team again or any of that, but I really, really enjoyed that being in control and being super focused like we've discussed today. I think when the stars align and I can do that, I'm going to be a super, super happy human being. And it excites me even speaking about it. So that would be the championship for me.
Well, you're in the country to do it, man. There's more opportunity here, especially with technology and everything to chase the dream of entrepreneurship is, my purpose now. My sport career is over and now it's being a full-blooded entrepreneur. All right, man. So a young athlete aspiring to race motocross professionally, ideally not your own child, someone else's. What do you tell him, man? Like, what's it take to race at a professional level? What's your what are you going to tell him?
So definitely in the beginning is to have fun and enjoy. My dad never put severe pressure on me when we started out. He always said, have fun. If you're not having fun, then we can call it a day. You won't offend me. I won't feel like you've disappointed me. So I would definitely instill that on whoever I would be working with, or whether it's my child or my son or my daughter, if she wanted to ride. But initially, definitely the fun part. Have fun riding your bike. Run out full tanks of gas, get used to the track. And if that person is super serious about, racing and doing all of those things, then obviously be prepared for whatever comes your way. So exercise and train and work on the mental side of things, and just, you kind of, you need to let it develop organically. I think if you push too soon, too quickly, you burn the kids out and they don't enjoy it. I raced against a lot of kids that were extremely talented, but maybe just being too pushed, pushed too hard too soon, they lost the love for the sport, which is sad. So definitely not too hard in the beginning, but when that potential starts showing, then start putting procedures in place, that you start doing everything with the structure. I'm super structured. I love structure. And luckily I've got that experience to be able to, pass that knowledge on. So that could also be an avenue in the future. I mean, I love the sport. I still follow it every single weekend. I love it. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah, that's, I think, really good, because with where sport is going, especially motocross, because you're pretty much physically, you're in your prime, your early 20s. And by the time you've hit 30, which in life is pretty young, but you're almost over the hill at age 30. But we're seeing more and more in all sports, kids starting so much younger until they've hit the age of 18, 19 years old, and they've already been playing competitively for 15 years. So I think that what you said there is super powerful in that you can't push them too soon.
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope because, especially coming from South Africa, if somebody shows potential, you really have to be showing potential at like 9, 8 years old.
Crazy.
Because you need to be starting to dabble in international racing when you're 11, 12. And then from there, you can really see if the kid has potential, and then you've got to get over there, whether it's to the States or to Europe. I mean, we know people that have sacrificed everything, sold up, moved to Europe. There's a couple of kids from South Africa that are racing World Championship motocross now, and they've also sold everything and moved over. And it's a big sacrifice, and it's a risk. It is a huge risk because, I mean, if you tell the normal person on the street that you're going to pull your kid out of school at 13, 14, 15 to go race motorcycles, most people think you are nuts. And the actual chance of you making it into the top level of the sport is, oh man, it's a lottery. So there's a lot of things that you need to consider, and you actually need somebody with a bit of experience in the sport to be able to say, hey, it's going to work. You've got a good chance of it working out, or kind of be blunt and say, maybe you should just race back home. And that's also difficult because who are you to tell anybody that they can't do what they're passionate about? So it's really tricky. I mean, you've got to, if you're super passionate, then by all means, you've got to try and you've got to push, because everybody peaks at different times and different ages. But yeah, it's tricky. Like you said, every sport starts at such a young age now. You've got to be showing potential when you're super young. Otherwise, you might just miss the boat. Yeah.
And not to take anything away from South Africa motocross, like it's I would say very similar to Canadian motocross on the same level. It's just that the US is a completely different beast.
Fortunately, exactly. Fortunately, Canada is so close to the US. So I mean, I know of a lot of Canadians that have come over to South Africa, to the States to race. And the level in South Africa is pretty good. I mean, one of my biggest competitors, he raced in Canada for a couple of years, I think, and he won a couple of nationals. So the level is good, and there's a lot of talent, but being so far south and so far away, we don't have factory equipment, and the tracks are not as good. So you're coming from a deficit already. So to make that up and then still to achieve what you want to achieve, it's a tall order, and that's why only a few people have done it. But the people that have been extremely successful, and they are animals.
Yeah. All right, Richard, toughest question of the whole interview here. 2023 US Supercross, who wins, Sexton, Webb, or Tomac?
Oh man, heart says Sexton. I just watching him is an absolute pleasure. I think his professionalism and his demeanor is so cool. I'm definitely rooting for him. I think Tomac gets it just because he's just an absolute beast. And I just think he's a bit stronger than Webb. Webb's crafty. His race temperament is incredible. But I think Tomac gets it done. Unless Chase can go win 6 out of 6. I think there's 6 more rounds to go. If you go 6 out of 6, then there could be a chance. But yeah, it'll be difficult.
Webb seems to be lacking a little bit of speed. You're right. He's got that racecraft, and he definitely knows how to get in the minds of the other racers. He's got that, even the look behind and the wave at Sexton in the heat race. He knows how to, I think more than any other rider, he's taken last lap wins or passes on the last lap than any other racer. He's just got that craft.
Yeah, I don't think there's many racers out there that have his racecraft in Supercross, man. It is unbelievable. When he's on, and especially the 2 years that he won the championships, it's unreal to watch. So if he brings that game into the final rounds against Tomac, yeah, it's going to be difficult to determine who wins. It'll be good.
And Sexton's got the speed, like it's like watching Carmichael and Stewart back in the day. Remember when their speed was just ridiculous, but you're holding your breath until the checkered flag, thinking, "Oh my God, don't wipe out, don't wipe out." And they had some of the gnarliest crashes.
Yeah, and Sexton, you just have to hope and pray that it's not getting into his head. He's at that level. He's super mentally strong, but he's racing the best in the world who are also equally as strong. So he needs to be perfect to win.
Yeah. Richard, this has been a lot of fun, man. I was definitely excited to have you on the show and talk motocross, my favorite subject. Right behind that, of course, finance and business. But motocross is my first true love. It's like that never goes away. Once it's motocross for life. So this was a pleasure, man. I really appreciate your time. We'll jump off live here and wrap up, but I want to thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome to talk motocross again, and yeah, till next time. Thank you.